The divorce papers felt heavier than they should have in my trembling hands. As I stared at the official seal, watching my 7-year-old daughter Ivy walk away with Graham toward his car, I realized that my desperate need for attention had cost me everything I actually cared about. The courthouse steps beneath my feet felt like the edge of a cliff, and I had already fallen. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. 6 months earlier, our apartment felt like a prison of routine and silence. Graham would come home from his IT consulting job at precisely 6:15, kiss my cheek with the enthusiasm of someone checking off a grocery list item, and disappear into his laptop until bedtime. I'd watch him from the kitchen, stirring dinner that would grow cold while he debugged code for clients who seemed more important than his wife. "Graham, can we talk?" I asked one Tuesday evening, standing in the doorway of his makeshift office. The spare bedroom had become his sanctuary, filled with monitors and cables that meant nothing to me. He didn't look up from his screen. "Give me 5 minutes, Eulalia. This deployment has to go live tonight." 5 minutes became an hour. It always did. I retreated to the living room, scrolling through my phone with growing resentment. My sister Anya had posted photos from her date night with Greg. Candlelit dinner, flowers, the works. Even my best friend Mia was getting more romance from her boyfriend of 3 months than I got from my husband of 8 years. When Graham finally emerged, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. He slipped under the covers without a word, and I lay there, listening to his breathing slow into sleep, while my mind raced with thoughts of how invisible I'd become. The next morning, I called in sick to my administrative assistant job and met Mia at our usual coffee shop downtown. The place buzzed with the energy of people who seemed to have purpose, direction, passion. Everything I felt was missing from my life. "He's completely checked out," I told Mia, stirring my latte with more force than necessary. "Last night, I could have been a piece of furniture for all the attention he paid me." Mia leaned forward, her dark eyes sympathetic. "Honey, you've been saying this for months. When's the last time he took you anywhere? When's the last time he made you feel special?" I couldn't remember. That realization hit me like a physical blow. "You're still young, Eulalia. You're beautiful, smart, funny. You deserve someone who sees that." Mia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Maybe it's time Graham remembered what he could lose. That afternoon, I returned to work with a new awareness of myself. I'd always been professional, efficient, invisible in the corporate maze of Henderson and Associates. But as I walked through the office, I noticed things differently. The way David from accounting smiled when I passed his desk. How James from marketing always found excuses to chat by the copy machine when I was there. And then there was Marcello Ford, the new project manager who'd started the previous week. 29, Italian heritage, with the kind of easy confidence that Graham had lost somewhere between college and middle management. He'd been nothing more than a polite colleague until that Wednesday afternoon when everything changed. "Eulalia, right?" He appeared beside my desk as I was packing up for the day. "I'm still learning everyone's names. You're the one who keeps this place running, from what I hear." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. When was the last time Graham had complimented my competence? I tried to stay organized. It's probably the only thing standing between this office and complete chaos. Marcello laughed, a genuine sound that made something flutter in my chest. "I believe it. Listen, I'm grabbing coffee across the street. Want to join me? I could use some insight into how things really work around here." I should have said no. I should have mentioned my husband, my daughter, my life outside that office. Instead, I heard myself saying, "I'd love to." The coffee turned into an hour of conversation that flowed easier than anything I'd experienced in months. Marcello asked about my opinions, my ideas, my thoughts on everything from office politics to favorite movies. He listened when I talked, maintained eye contact, laughed at my jokes. I felt like I was remembering who I used to be before I became just Graham's wife and Ivy's mother. "You're not what I expected," Marcello said as we walked back to the office building. "What do you mean?" "Most people in corporate environments are so guarded, so careful. You're real. It's refreshing." That night, I found myself humming while I cooked dinner. Graham noticed enough to comment. "You seem cheerful," he said, not looking up from his phone as he scrolled through work emails at the kitchen table. "I had a good day at work." I waited for him to ask for details, to show any curiosity about what had lifted my spirits. He just nodded and returned to his phone. Later, after Ivy was asleep and Graham was back in his office cave, I sat on our couch and replayed every moment of my conversation with Marcello. The way he'd leaned in when I spoke, how he'd remembered details from our brief previous interactions, the genuine interest in his eyes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Marcello. Got your number from the office directory. Hope that's okay. Thanks for the coffee today. Made my first week here a lot better. M." I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "Of course it's okay. Welcome to the Henderson chaos. Glad I could help. Eulalia." His response came quickly. "Looking forward to more conversations." "You're an interesting woman, Eulalia." I read those words 3 times, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Someone found me interesting, not useful, not efficient, not convenient, interesting. From Graham's office came the familiar sounds of keyboard clicking and frustrated sighs. Another late night of work that was more important than his wife. I saved Marcello's number in my phone and went to bed alone, again. The following week blurred past in a haze of stolen glances and carefully casual conversations. Marcello had a way of appearing whenever I needed help reaching something from a high shelf, or when I was struggling with the temperamental copy machine. Each interaction felt charged with possibility. "Working late again?" he asked on Thursday evening as I gathered files from my desk. The office had emptied out, leaving us in the comfortable quiet of after hours. "Always. These reports won't organize themselves." I gestured at the stack of quarterly reviews that needed to be filed before morning. "I could help," Marcello offered. "I'm in no hurry to get home to my empty apartment." The offer hung in the air between us. I knew I should decline, should mention that Graham would be expecting me, that Ivy needed help with her homework. Instead, I found myself nodding. "That would be great, actually. Thank you." We worked side by side for the next hour, our conversation flowing from work topics to personal stories. I learned that Marcello had moved here from Chicago for the job, that he'd ended a long-term relationship 6 months ago, that he loved cooking, but rarely bothered when it was just for himself. "What about you?" he asked as we finished the last stack of files. "Husband waiting at home with dinner." It was the first time either of us had directly acknowledged my marital status. I could have lied, could have painted a picture of domestic bliss. Instead, I heard myself saying, "He's probably still working. He's always working." "That's a shame," Marcello said quietly. "If I had someone like you waiting at home, work would be the last thing on my mind." The words hit me like electricity. I looked up to find him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Marcello." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." But he didn't look sorry, and I didn't want him to be. My phone rang, Graham's name flashing on the screen. Reality crashed back over me. "Hi," I answered, stepping away from Marcello. "Where are you? It's almost 8. Graham's voice carried the irritation of someone whose routine had been disrupted. "Still at the office. I had some reports to finish." "Can't that wait until tomorrow? Ivy's asking for you." Guilt twisted in my stomach. "I'll be home in 20 minutes. I hung up and turned back to Marcello, who was maintaining a careful distance. "I should go," I said. "Of course." He moved toward his own desk. "Eulalia." I paused at the elevator. "If you ever want to grab dinner sometime just to talk, I'd like that." I should have said no. Should have drawn the line clearly and definitively. Instead, I said, "I'd like that too." The drive home felt surreal, like I was floating between two different versions of my life. In one, I was Eulalia, the wife and mother, dutiful and responsible. In the other, I was someone interesting enough to capture the attention of an attractive, successful man who actually wanted to spend time with me. Graham was loading the dishwasher when I walked in, his movements sharp with annoyance. "Ivy's already in bed," he said without looking at me. She waited as long as she could. "I'm sorry, work has been crazy lately." "When isn't it?" He closed the dishwasher with more force than necessary. I had to cancel my call with the Peterson account to help her with her math homework. The accusation in his voice sparked my own irritation. "I'm sorry your daughter interrupted your precious work schedule." Graham finally looked at me, his expression tired. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." But I was already walking away, climbing the stairs to check on Ivy. She was asleep, her small face peaceful against the pillow, and I felt the familiar tug of maternal love mixed with guilt. She deserved better than parents who could barely stand to be in the same room together. I found Graham in his office, already back at his computer. "We need to talk," I said from the doorway. "Can it wait? I have this presentation tomorrow, and I'm behind because you had to be a father for an hour?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Graham's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Forget it." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "No, you obviously have something to say. Let's hear it." I turned back, seeing him properly for the first time in months. When had the lines around his eyes become so pronounced? When had his shoulders developed that permanent hunch from hunching over computers? "When's the last time we had a real conversation, Graham? When's the last time you asked me how my day was and actually listened to the answer?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You want to talk? Fine. How was your day, Eulalia?" The question, delivered with such obvious reluctance, felt like a slap. "Never mind." "That's what I thought." He turned back to his computer. "You want attention when it's convenient for you, but you don't actually want to put in the work of being in a relationship." The accusation stung because it felt backwards, upside down. I was the one putting in work, trying to connect, trying to bridge the gap that seemed to widen every day. "You're unbelievable," I said, and left him to his precious work. That night, lying in bed while Graham typed away in the next room, I thought about Marcello's dinner invitation, about how it felt to be seen, to be wanted, to matter to someone. My phone buzzed with a text. "Hope you made it home safely. Sweet dreams. M." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you. Sweet dreams to you too." His reply came immediately. "Tomorrow's Friday. Still interested in that dinner?" I looked toward Graham's office, where light still spilled from under the door, listened to the constant clicking of keys that had become the soundtrack of our marriage. "Yes," I typed back. "I'd love to." Saturday dinner at Graham's parents' house had been a monthly tradition for years, but lately, it felt more like a performance I was tired of giving. Therese and Peter Vane lived in the same suburban house where Graham had grown up, and everything about the place screamed stability, tradition, family values, all the things I was systematically destroying. "Eulalia, you look lovely," Therese said as she opened the front door, pulling me into her familiar hug that smelled of lavender and vanilla. At 62, she still maintained the kind of effortless elegance that made me feel perpetually underdressed. "Thank you, Therese. You always know just what to say to make a person feel special." The comment was innocent enough, but I caught Graham's sharp glance. He'd been watching me more carefully lately, and I couldn't decide if it thrilled or terrified me. "Where's my favorite granddaughter?" Peter called from the living room, and Ivy ran to him with the kind of enthusiasm she used to show me. "Grandpa, I learned a new song at school. Want to hear it?" As Ivy launched into an off-key but enthusiastic rendition of something involving rainbows and friendship, I found myself studying the family dynamic I'd married into. Peter, retired from his accounting firm, but still sharp as ever. Therese, who'd raised 3 successful children and somehow made it look effortless. Graham, their middle child, who'd inherited their work ethic, but seemed to have missed the gene for emotional availability. "How's work treating you, son?" Peter asked as we settled around the dinner table. Therese had outdone herself with pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans that actually tasted like they'd grown in a garden instead of a can. "Busy," Graham replied, cutting his meat with precise movements. "The Morrison project is finally wrapping up, but we've got 3 new contracts starting next month." "That's wonderful," Therese beamed. "You work so hard, Graham. I hope Eulalia appreciates what a dedicated provider she married." I felt all eyes turn to me, waiting for the dutiful wife's response. 6 months ago, I would have smiled and agreed, would have played my part in the happy family tableau. Tonight, something rebellious stirred in my chest. "Oh, I appreciate it," I said, my voice carrying just enough edge to make everyone look up from their plates. Graham is definitely dedicated to providing. For his clients, his projects, his deadlines. Very, very dedicated. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Ivy continued eating, oblivious to the tension, but the adults all seemed to be holding their breath. "Eulalia," Graham said quietly, a warning in his tone. "What? I'm agreeing with your mother. You are dedicated. Sometimes I joke that I should schedule an appointment if I want to have a conversation with my husband." I laughed as if it was all very funny, very light-hearted, but the words hung in the air like smoke. Therese's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Peter cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Marriage requires understanding," Therese said carefully. "Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the good of the family." "Of course," I agreed. "I've gotten very good at understanding. And sacrificing. Haven't I, Graham?" Graham set down his fork with deliberate control. "Maybe we should change the subject." "Why? We're just talking about how dedicated you are, how you never let anything interfere with your work, how you can spend 3 hours debugging code, but can't find 5 minutes to ask your wife about her day." "Eulalia." This time, Graham's voice carried a clear warning, but I couldn't stop. Months of resentment poured out disguised as casual conversation. "I was telling Mia the other day how lucky I am. Most wives complain that their husbands don't have hobbies. Graham's hobby is working. Very convenient. No expensive equipment. No time away from home. He can ignore his family right from the comfort of his own office. That's enough." Graham's words were quiet but final. Ivy looked up from her mashed potatoes, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Why is everyone being weird?" "No one's being weird, sweetheart," I said quickly, my maternal instincts finally overriding my need to wound. "Mummy was just being silly." But the damage was done. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation about Ivy's school activities and Peter's garden. Graham barely spoke, and I caught Therese watching me with a puzzled expression, as if she was seeing me clearly for the first time. After dinner, while Ivy played with her grandmother's collection of music boxes, Graham stepped out onto the back patio. I followed, closing the sliding door behind us. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What was what? I was making conversation." "You were humiliating me in front of my parents." I crossed my arms, the evening air cool against my skin. "I was being honest. Maybe you don't like how the truth sounds." Graham stared at me for a long moment. "You've changed, Eulalia. I don't know what's going on with you lately, but this isn't you. Maybe this is me. Maybe you just never bothered to pay attention before." "I pay attention." "When? Between client calls and project deadlines, and whatever crisis is more important than your family this week. I work hard for this family. Everything I do is for you and Ivy." "No, Graham, everything you do is for you, because work is safe and predictable and doesn't require you to actually connect with another human being." He was quiet for so long I thought he might not respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, colder. "If you're so unhappy, maybe we should do something about it." Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. There was a stillness about him that I'd never seen before, a quality of decision that made my stomach clench. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe it's time we both stop pretending this is working. Before I could respond, the patio door slid open and Ivy appeared. "Daddy, Grandma wants to know if you want coffee." Graham's expression shifted instantly, becoming gentle as he smiled at our daughter. "Tell Grandma yes, please. We'll be right in." Ivy skipped back inside, and Graham followed without another word to me. I stood on the patio for several minutes, replaying the conversation and trying to shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted. When I finally went back inside, Graham was sitting with Ivy on his lap, helping her play a simple melody on Teresa's old piano. The sight of them together, dark heads bent over the keys, made my chest ache. "She has musical talent," Teresa observed, settling beside me on the couch with her coffee. "Takes after her father. Graham was always musical as a child." "I didn't know that," I admitted. Teresa gave me a sharp look. "There's a lot you might not know about my son. He doesn't talk about himself much, but he feels things deeply. Always has." The words felt like a gentle rebuke, and I found myself watching Graham with new eyes. When had I stopped trying to learn new things about him? When had I decided I knew everything there was to know? The drive home was silent except for Ivy's chatter about her grandparents and the songs she'd learned. Graham's hands were steady on the steering wheel, but I could feel the distance between us, like a physical presence. That night, after Ivy was in bed, I found Graham in his office. But instead of working, he was sitting in his chair, staring at his dark computer screen. "Graham?" He didn't look at me. "I'm tired, Eulalia. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of being the villain in your story. I'm tired of feeling like nothing I do is ever enough." "You don't have to be the villain. You could just try. We could try. I have been trying. For months I've been trying, but you've already decided I'm the problem, and nothing I do is going to change your mind." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the words wouldn't come, because somewhere deep down, I knew he wasn't entirely wrong. I had decided he was the problem. It was easier than examining my own choices, my own failures, my own growing attraction to someone who wasn't my husband. "I'm going to bed," he said, standing up. "We'll talk tomorrow." But as he passed me in the doorway, he paused. "Eulalia, I know something's going on. I don't know what yet, but I know. And when I figure it out, this conversation is going to look very different." He left me standing in his office, my heart pounding with a mixture of guilt and defiance. He suspected something, but he didn't know anything. And maybe, if I was careful, he never would. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcello. "How was dinner with the family?" I stared at the message, realizing I'd told him about tonight's plans during our lunch yesterday. The fact that he'd remembered, that he'd thought to check on me, made something warm unfurl in my chest. "Complicated," I typed back, "looking forward to Monday." "Me too. Sleep well, beautiful." I deleted the message thread and went to bed, but sleep was a long time coming. The lunch had been Marcello's idea, presented as a working meal to discuss the Henderson account integration. But as we sat across from each other in the dim lighting of Russo's Italian bistro, the conversation had nothing to do with work. "You seem distracted today," Marcello said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. The contact sent electricity up my arm, and I didn't pull away. "Things at home are tense. Want to talk about it?" I looked into his dark eyes, seeing genuine concern there. When was the last time Graham had asked me to talk about my feelings? When was the last time he'd looked at me like I mattered? "My husband thinks something's going on," I admitted. Marcello's thumb traced across my knuckles. "Is something going on?" The question hung between us, loaded with possibility and danger. I thought about Graham's cold distance over the past week, the way he'd started sleeping on the couch, claiming his back was bothering him, the way he'd stopped trying to make conversation altogether. "I don't know," I whispered. "I think you do know." Marcello's voice was soft, hypnotic. "The question is what you want to do about it." Before I could answer, my phone rang. Graham's name on the screen felt like a bucket of ice water. "I have to take this," I said, pulling my hand away from Marcello's. "Hi," I answered, stepping away from the table. "Where are you?" Graham's voice was clipped, professional. "Lunch meeting, the Henderson integration project." "With who?" The question was casual, but something in his tone made my pulse quicken. "Marcello Ford, the new project manager." "Right, Marcello." Graham was quiet for a moment. "What time will you be back?" "An hour or so. Why?" "No reason. I'll talk to you tonight." He hung up without saying goodbye, leaving me staring at my phone with a growing sense of unease. "Everything okay?" Marcello asked when I returned to the table. "Fine. He's just checking up on me." "Possessive?" "Suspicious." Marcello leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Maybe it's time to stop giving him reasons to be suspicious." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time to be honest about what this is." He gestured between us. "What we are. We're friends, colleagues." "Are we?" Marcello's smile was knowing. "Because friends don't usually look at each other the way you're looking at me right now." Heat flooded my cheeks. "Marcello, I'm not going to pressure you, Eulalia, but I'm also not going to pretend this is just friendship. I think about you constantly. I find excuses to walk by your desk. I've never felt this connected to someone so quickly." His words were everything I'd been longing to hear from Graham for months. The attention, the desire, the acknowledgement of connection. It was intoxicating. "I think about you too," I admitted, "then stop fighting it. Life's too short to stay in a marriage that makes you miserable." The word marriage brought reality crashing back. I have a daughter. Who deserves a mother who's happy? Who deserves to see what a healthy relationship looks like? "And you think that's us?" "I think we could find out." I left the restaurant in a daze, Marcello's words echoing in my head. The drive back to the office felt surreal, like I was floating between two different lives, two different versions of myself. That evening, I arrived home to find Graham and Ivy in the kitchen, making what appeared to be dinner together. The sight should have warmed me, but instead it felt like an accusation. "Mommy!" Ivy ran to me, flour dusting her small hands. "Daddy's teaching me to make pancakes for dinner. He says sometimes it's fun to have breakfast food at night time." "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Graham didn't look up from the stove, where he was flipping pancakes with methodical precision. "How was your lunch meeting?" "Productive. We made good progress on the integration timeline." "I'm sure you did." His tone was neutral, but something in it made me look at him more carefully. There was a stillness about him that I'd noticed more and more lately, a quality of watchful waiting. "Daddy, tell Mummy about the funny story you told me about when you were little," Ivy chattered, oblivious to the undercurrents in the room. "Maybe later, Bug. Right now, let's focus on not burning these pancakes." Dinner was a strange affair, Ivy delighted with the novelty of breakfast for dinner, Graham politely distant, and me struggling to act normal while my mind replayed every moment of my lunch with Marcello. After Ivy was in bed, I found Graham in the living room, reading a book instead of working on his laptop. The change in routine was so unusual that I paused in the doorway. "No work tonight." "I'm taking a break from work." He looked up from his book, something about legal procedures that I didn't recognize. "Thought I might try being present for my family." The words should have made me happy, but they felt too late, too little. "That's good. Is it? You don't sound convinced." I settled on the opposite end of the couch, the distance between us feeling vast. "I just wonder why now. What's changed?" Graham closed his book, marking his place carefully. Maybe I've realized that some things are more important than work. Such as paying attention to what's happening in my own home. The way he said it made my stomach clench. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been distracted, focused on the wrong things, but I'm paying attention now, Eulalia, to everything. We stared at each other across the couch, and I had the unsettling feeling that we were having two different conversations. Graham seemed to be speaking in code, and I wasn't sure I wanted to understand what he was really saying. I'm going to take a bath, I said, standing up. Good idea. You seem tense lately. As I headed upstairs, I felt his eyes following me. In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. He knew something. I could feel it in the air between us, in the careful way he was choosing his words. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcello. Can't stop thinking about lunch. About you. I stared at the message, torn between deleting it and responding. Before I could decide, another message appeared. I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend I don't have feelings for you. And then, if you feel the same way, meet me tomorrow night. Dinner, just us. No more pretending it's about work. I heard Graham's footsteps on the stairs and quickly deleted the messages. But as I ran the bath water, I found myself thinking about Marcello's invitation. About the way he looked at me, like I was fascinating, desirable, worth pursuing. About how long it had been since Graham had looked at me that way. About how it might feel to be wanted again, even if it meant crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The water was too hot, but I sank into it anyway, letting the heat wash over me, like the decision I was already making. The restaurant Marcello had chosen was intimate and dimly lit, the kind of place where married women definitely shouldn't be having dinner with men who weren't their husbands. But as I sat across from him, watching candlelight flicker across his handsome features, I found it hard to care about shoulds and shouldn'ts. You came, he said, his smile warm with genuine pleasure. I almost didn't. What changed your mind? I thought about Graham's increasing coldness, the way he'd started treating me like a stranger in our own home, the way he'd looked at me that morning, like he was solving a puzzle he didn't particularly want to complete. I'm tired of feeling invisible, I said finally. You could never be invisible, not to me. Marcello reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The touch was electric, forbidden, everything my marriage had stopped being years ago. Tell me about your marriage, he said softly. I should have pulled my hand away, should have said this was inappropriate. Instead, I found myself talking about the slow erosion of connection, the gradual shift from partners to roommates to strangers sharing a mortgage. He doesn't see me anymore, I admitted. I'm just part of the routine, like brushing his teeth or checking his email. His loss, Marcello said, lifting my hand to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to my knuckles. Any man who takes you for granted is a fool. The kiss was brief, barely there, but it sent shockwaves through my entire body. When was the last time Graham had touched me with any kind of intention, any awareness of me as a woman, rather than just a wife? Marcello, I know this is complicated. I know you have responsibilities, commitments, but I also know that life is short, and chances like this don't come along often. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying I'm falling for you, Eulalia. Hard and fast and completely, and I think you feel something too. I did feel something, sitting there with his hand holding mine, looking into eyes that saw me as desirable and interesting and worth pursuing. I felt more alive than I had in years. I do feel something, I whispered. Then let's see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibility. When he walked me to my car later, the kiss was inevitable. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper as I melted into him. It had been so long since someone had kissed me like they meant it, like they couldn't help themselves. I should go, I breathed against his lips. I know. But he didn't step away, and neither did I. This is crazy. The best things usually are. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling, my entire body humming with awakened desire. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, and I felt a stab of guilt thinking about Ivy asleep upstairs, trusting in a mother who was making choices that could destroy her world. Graham was in the kitchen when I came in, sitting at the table with his laptop open and a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. "How was book club?" he asked without looking up from his screen. For a moment I couldn't remember what lie I'd told him. "Oh, good. We discussed. The ending was surprising." "I'm sure it was." His fingers stilled on the keyboard. "What book are you reading again?" My mind went blank. It's... You wouldn't know it. Try me." There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully. He was watching me now, his expression unreadable. "I'm tired," I said quickly. "I think I'll go to bed." "Eulalia?" I paused at the kitchen doorway. "There is no book club tonight. I called the library. They said book club meets on Wednesdays, not Fridays." The words hit me like a physical blow. I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I must have gotten confused about which night. "Where were you?" The question was quiet, but it carried the weight of 8 years of marriage, of trust that was cracking down the middle. "I told you, book club." Graham closed his laptop with deliberate care. "I also called Mia and Anya. Neither of them knew about any book club." The room felt like it was spinning. "You called my sister? You called my friends?" "I called my wife's sister and best friend because my wife has been lying to me, and I wanted to know where she really was tonight." "You had no right." "I had no right." Graham stood up, and for the first time in our marriage, he looked truly angry. Not frustrated or tired or disappointed, furious. "I had no right to wonder where my wife was when she lied about her whereabouts. I wasn't lying. I just got confused. Stop." The word cut through my stammering excuses. "Just stop, Eulalia. We both know you weren't at book club. We both know you've been lying to me for weeks. The question is whether you're going to keep lying or whether you're going to tell me the truth." I stared at him, this man I'd been married to for 8 years, and realized I barely recognized him. The passive, distracted husband had been replaced by someone harder, more focused, more dangerous. "There's nothing to tell." Graham nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed something he'd already suspected. "Okay," he said quietly. "If that's how you want to play this." "Play what?" "Graham, you're being paranoid." "Am I? Then you won't mind if I check your phone." The request hit me like ice water. "What?" "Your phone. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about." I thought about the deleted text messages, the carefully erased call history, about Marcello's number saved under a fake name, about all the evidence I thought I'd covered. That's a violation of privacy. So is lying to your husband. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I realized this was a moment that would define everything that came after. I could confess, could try to explain, could throw myself on his mercy and hope for forgiveness, or I could double down. "I'm not giving you my phone, Graham, and I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated like a criminal." "Then we have a problem." "The only problem we have is your paranoia and your inability to trust your own wife." Graham was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. "You know what, Eulalia? You're right. I clearly can't trust my own wife. Thank you for making that so clear." He picked up his laptop and headed for the stairs. "Where are you going?" "To bed. We'll finish this conversation tomorrow." But as he reached the bottom of the staircase, he turned back. "Oh, and Eulalia, I've made an appointment for us to meet with someone on Monday afternoon. 2 o'clock. Don't make any other plans." "What kind of appointment?" "The kind that's long overdue." He left me standing in the kitchen, my hands shaking and my mind racing. I'd won this round, but it felt like the kind of victory that was actually a defeat. Upstairs, I could hear him moving around in his office, and I knew he wouldn't be sleeping tonight. Neither would I. I thought about texting Marcello, about the comfort of his voice, the validation of his attention, but something held me back. For the first time since this all started, I wondered what I was really doing, what I was really risking, and whether it was worth the price I was starting to realize I might have to pay. The law office of Martinez and Associates was nothing like I'd expected. I'd imagined something intimidating, all dark wood and leather-bound books. Instead, it was modern and bright, with abstract art on the walls and a receptionist who smiled like she was greeting old friends, rather than people whose lives were falling apart. "Mrs. Vane, Mr. Martinez will see you now." I followed Graham down a hallway lined with family photos. The lawyer's children, I assumed, grinning gap-toothed smiles that seemed to mock the dissolution happening in the conference room behind us. Graham had been coldly polite all morning, helping Ivy with her cereal and backpack like it was any other Monday. He'd kissed her goodbye with extra tenderness, I noticed, holding her just a beat longer than usual. "Have a good day at school, Bug. Daddy loves you very much." "Love you too, Daddy. Love you, Mummy." I'd hugged her tight, breathing in her little girl smell of strawberry shampoo and innocence, wondering if this might be one of the last normal mornings we'd ever have. Now, sitting in the conference room with Graham and a lawyer I'd never met, I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. "Mrs. Vane," Mr. Martinez began, his voice professionally gentle, "I want you to understand that you have the right to have your own legal representation present for this conversation." "I don't understand what this conversation is about," I said, looking between him and Graham. "Graham, what is this?" Graham opened a manila folder and slid several photographs across the table to me. My blood turned to ice as I recognized myself and Marcello at Russo's, his hand covering mine. Another photo of us in the parking lot, standing close together. A third of our kiss by my car. "Where did you get these?" I whispered. "It doesn't matter where I got them," Graham said quietly. "What matters is that they exist." I looked up at him, this man I'd shared a bed with for 8 years, and saw a stranger. His face was calm, controlled, but his eyes held a coldness I'd never seen before. "Graham, I can explain—" "Can you? Can you explain why you've been lying to me for weeks? Can you explain why you told me you were at book club when you were actually having dinner with another man? Can you explain this?" He slid another photo across the table. This one showed Marcello and me in his car, outside a hotel I'd never been to, except I recognized my dress, the one I'd worn to our second dinner. The one where we'd talked about possibilities and futures that didn't include my husband. "I never went to any hotel," I said quickly. "No, you didn't. But you thought about it, didn't you? You sat in his car and talked about it. The private investigator has very good equipment. We can hear every word you said." The room started to spin. "You hired a private investigator?" "I hired a professional to document what my wife was doing when she wasn't where she said she'd be." "Mr. Vane has been very thorough," Martinez said, opening his own folder. "We have photographs, audio recordings, phone records, credit card statements, GPS data from your vehicle." "GPS data?" "I've been tracking your car for 3 weeks," Graham said matter-of-factly. "Amazing what you can learn when you actually pay attention." I felt like I was drowning, like the air in the room had become too thick to breathe. "You've been spying on me. I've been gathering evidence of my wife's adultery." "I never slept with him." "No, you didn't, but you were planning to. The audio from last Friday's dinner is very clear about your intentions." The lawyer slid the settlement across the table, like a menu I never wanted to order from. Primary custody to Graham, house sold. 2 years of alimony and every other weekend with my daughter. I kept saying the same useless sentence. "I don't want this." Graham looked at me with eyes that had already left the marriage months ago. "Then you should have acted like it," he said. No yelling, no tears from him. just the quiet final click of a door closing forever. That night, he packed one suitcase and moved to a hotel. Ivy asked why Daddy was taking his sleepover bag. I told her grown-ups sometimes need quiet. She nodded like that made sense and asked if she could still have pancakes on Saturday. Marcello texted, "Everything okay?" I typed, "It's over. Lose my number." He never replied. Friday morning I signed where the little flags told me to sign. The pen felt like it weighed 40 pounds. Outside the courthouse, Graham took Ivy's hand. She waved at me with the shy half-wave she uses when she's not sure if it's okay to be happy. I stood on the steps until their car disappeared. Then I walked to my new apartment, second floor, beige carpet, no memories, and sat on a couch that still had the store tags dangling from the cushions. I was free now. Exactly the way I once thought I wanted. The silence was enormous. I finally understood the difference between being wanted for a moment and being loved for a lifetime. One of them had just driven away holding my daughter's hand, and the other one had never really existed at all.